Hello and welcome back to Silent Hunter 4. You're joining me once again in the Dutch East Indies, here in the port of Surabaya, on the island of Java. The date is February 22nd, 1942, and if you know the timeline in the area here during the war, you know that trouble is brewing. We're surrounded on all sides by Japanese invasions throughout the Dutch East Indies. But, bit of good news, thanks to our performance in the old S-boat, I've been given command of a new submarine. So very exciting, definitely an upgrade, but I think that the Navy's definition of new and shiny submarine, which is the wording that they used last time, is different from my definition of that. I've been given command of the USS Pickerel, SS-177, a Porpoise Class sub, so hardly a new and shiny submarine rolling off the construction ways. This is a mid-30s fleet boat, in fact one of the earliest successful models of the U.S. Navy fleet boat, commissioned in the 1934 and 35 fiscal years. So we have upgraded to a newer model by about 10 or 15 years, but certainly not a new submarine, just new to us. So, looking at the crew roster, we see that we have a manpower shortage, so we're going to have to assign new crew members from the shore pool. It seems that, rather than me just separating from the S-38 and reporting to my new command, the entire crew has come with me. This is definitely not usually how things work. Realistically speaking, most of the old crew would have stayed with the S-38, with likely some percentage being detached to head back to new constructions, or maybe back to instructor positions at both the enlisted A schools, or maybe the New London Submarine School itself. We've got the slots here for 75 men, which is right around the Pickerel's real wartime crew complement. So we're going to have to fill up those spots. We'll start bringing those replacements in now to fully man up the sub. There we go, full crew complement now. I'm very excited to have aft torpedoes now, which is one of the new compartments we had to find crew for. Obviously not something we had on the S-38 because of the construction of the old boat, the design of its stern, its propellers, and its horizontal dive planes. There was no room back there for aft torpedoes. Now, we've got two tubes back there with a couple of reloads. So that gives us more flexibility during attacks, and also lets us take more torpedoes with us out on patrol. Okay, let's take a look and see what kind of equipment we have on this submarine. Right out of the gate, we have an anti-aircraft gun, a 50 cal, an M2 Browning. That's mounted on the aft part of the superstructure, on what's known as the cigarette deck. Takes a crew of 3, and it says, initially designed near the end of the Great War as an aircraft weapon, the M2 has been modified for use with an AA mount on U.S. Navy warships. It's the standard AA gun in use on fleet submarines. So, single 50 cal, not super effective against aerial targets, but more than we had on the other ship. Our new deck gun is an aft-mounted 3-inch 50 caliber gun, which unfortunately is going to be a lot smaller than what we're used to. We had that nice 4-inch gun on the S-boat, and we put it to good use on that last mission. The 3-inch guns were found to be pretty underpowered, and in fact later in the war, many of them would be swapped out for 4-inch guns taken off of S-boats who were being rotated back to training duty, so they would take those 4-inch guns off and put them on some of the newer fleet boats. Now here's a fun aside. You may be looking at the two guns and thinking, how can they both be 50 caliber guns? They're obviously very different in size as well as power. How can they both be 50 cals? And that's because the term caliber had different meanings when applied to small arms versus naval guns. When dealing with small arms, caliber refers to the size of the bore in inches. So the Browning 50 cal has a 1/2 inch wide bore, or .50. In naval guns, though, or I guess in any large artillery-type weapons, caliber or calibers refers to the length of the barrel in relation to the diameter of the round. So our 3-inch 50 caliber gun, for example, has a bore diameter of 3 inches and a barrel length of 50 calibers, or 50 times the 3 inches of the bore diameter. Now that obviously makes it a little confusing because a caliber is not a fixed unit of measurement. It is a multiple of the bore size, so it's different for every gun, depending on the size of the round, right? But essentially, guns that have more calibers, meaning they have a longer barrel, tend to be more powerful and more accurate. Next, we have some exciting black magic available for the boat. Something called radar, or radar, perhaps? But yes, SD radar, now available, a rudimentary air radar to help us spot incoming aircraft, designed to detect aircraft up to 8 miles away at a minimum altitude of 2,000 feet. So 8 miles, not that far away, just a few miles further than the horizon line, but still a big help to the lookouts and ensuring the safety of the sub, so we'll take it. No other equipment is available right now, so let's move on over to the torpedo page. So here we are loaded with 16 Mark 14 torpedoes, and there are some very obvious benefits to these larger torpedoes. First of all, we have much larger range. Even at fast speed, we have 1,000 more yard range than the Mark 10s, which topped out at about 3,500. So we have 4,500 yards at high speed. Mark 14s have a variable 2-speed setting, so for really long sniper shots, we could actually set it on low speed at 31.5 knots for a 9,000 yard range, although hitting something at that range is definitely tricky, if not impossible. But so 2-speed settings, 46 knots, 31.5. Propulsion wet heater. It's got a dual selectable detonator as well, so either an impact or magnetic, the idea being to set the torpedoes just under the keel of a ship, and as it passes through the magnetic field of that ship, it triggers the detonation, and you have an explosion underneath which could potentially break the back of the ship and just overall do more damage. Much will be talked about these magnetic detonators in the future, because there was a bit of a problem with them. Description says, the standard issue torpedo for our fleet boats, there are widespread rumors of problems experienced with this weapon, but BUORD, the Navy Bureau of Ordnance, insists that they are not to blame. And again, this is an entire discussion that we'll get into at a later date, but even this early, we would be hearing rumors and probably even be reading the after-action reports of other submarines who have been experiencing problems with these Mark 14. So even though we spent the first couple months in our S-boats with the Mark 10s, I think from talking to other skippers, reading those reports, we would be very aware of potential problems with the Mark 14s. Okay, so that's going to cover just about everything we need for checking out our new ship, getting her ready for sea. Let's head on over to the mission board and receive our orders for our next patrol. To Jim Stavridis, USS Pickerel, SS-177. Depart on February 27th, 1942, so that's 5 days from now. Proceed to the Karamata Straits area and conduct barrier patrol within 75 nautical miles of its center point. Additional direction will be provided via message traffic. Make reports as necessary to ABDA Task Force 3. ABDA being the American, British, Dutch, and Australian Combined Command, operating out of Surabaya here for the moment. Our objective, reach Karamata Strait area, which, guess what, is just outside Surabaya in the Java Sea. So this is going to be extremely quick and easy to get to this objective. So let's get going. We've got a couple of days to get underway. Good morning. It's February 27th, and final preparations are being made to get underway to pull out of Surabaya here, just as the sun is peeking up over the horizon in the east. Here we get our first glimpse of our new ship, the USS Pickerel, looking very sleek and deadly as she sits low in the water. The Porpoise Class were 10 submarines built between 1933 and 1937. They were the first successful attempts at the Navy's fleet submarine concept, setting the blueprint for all of the classes of World War II submarine that followed. Since 1921, the Navy had wanted submarines with the speed to keep up with modern, fast battleship lines, scouting ahead and whittling enemy forces down before a major surface attack. It was understood that the S-boats, then rolling off the lines, would not be able to fill this role, and throughout the 20s, a series of sub-designs attempted to fulfill the requirement for a fast, long-range cruiser submarine. These 9 boats, known as the V-boats, were built to wildly differing and radical designs, and all were considered failures. But the experience gained from them led to the successful design of the Porpoise in 1934. The now familiar fleet boat shape, cemented by the porpoises, had begun all the way back in 1920 with the S-3, the Portsmouth Navy Yard's design for the S-boat class. The shape was further developed in the 1920s with the V-boats, Dolphin, Cachalot, and Cuttlefish. The Porpoise Class, while visually similar to the Cachalot, was 30 feet longer, fitting more machinery inside and adopting a vertical chisel rudder that allowed room for aft-firing torpedo tubes. The Porpoises were the first subs with all-electric drive, a propulsion arrangement where the main engines only drove generators and were not directly connected to the propeller shafts. Older direct drive designs, like our old S-38, required one shaft to be physically disconnected from its diesel during charging so the engine could spin a generator. Now, with the addition of 2 more diesels and the all-electric system, Porpoises had a much more flexible plant that could shuffle the 4 engines from propulsion to charging duties as needed. As had been the case with the S-boats, there were several subclasses of the Porpoise boats based on where they were built. The P-1 types were the first 2 of the class from the Navy Yards in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. These 2 boats, the Porpoise and the Pike, were still riveted and had full double hulls. The P-2 types were the Shark and the Perch, coming from Electric Boat in Groton, and were instead fully welded and used partial double hulls. The Navy liked the Electric Boat design more, and the rest of the Porpoises, ordered the following year in 1935, were based on that design and designated the P-5. It's interesting to note that the Navy Yards were wary of welding and resistant to change, and the 3 P-5s that came from the Navy Yards were still riveted, making them the last riveted U.S. subs ever made. The Porpoises were by no means perfect, and several wartime modifications had to be made. The original conning tower was huge and easily identifiable by Japanese lookouts. The structure also prevented the 50 caliber machine gun on the cigarette deck from being used against small surface targets. Subtender crews would start cutting away the aft structure around March of 1942. The armament of the Porpoises was also found to be light. As built, they had only 4 forward torpedo tubes and 2 aft. War experience was showing that larger torpedo salvos were more effective, and during overhauls in 1942, the ships began to have 2 additional tubes added to their superstructure. Based on British designs, these were one-shot tubes that were outside the pressure hull and could not be reloaded at sea. While the intent was nice, these tubes ended up being more problematic than helpful. They were located above the waterline, just forward of the dive planes, and the subsequent drop into the water from above caused erratic torpedo behavior when fired. Torpedoes could not be serviced once loaded, and after several weeks at sea, their reliability could not be verified. The tubes were also susceptible to depth charge damage. All this caused the already unreliable Mark 14 torpedoes to malfunction at an even higher rate when fired from these external tubes. The Porpoise boats continued fighting until late 1944. The war was hard on the old boats, and 4 of the 10 were lost in action. The remaining 6 were pulled from active duty to return stateside as training vessels. Despite problems with engine reliability, torpedo tubes, electrical systems, and leaky ballast tanks, the ships were generally well liked by their crews. 4 Porpoises remained in use following the war as reserve training submarines until scrapped in 1957 and 1958. The P-boats altogether sunk a total of 72 ships for 355,000 tons, damaging many more, including a Japanese aircraft carrier. Our own P-boat is the USS Pickerel SS-177. She was built at Electric Boat in Connecticut and launched on July 7, 1936. She is one of the P-5 types, almost identical to the Electric Boat P-2, except with 2 extra feet to ease some crowding in the engine rooms. Her first commander was Lieutenant Leon Huffman. She was 300 feet long, had a draft of 15 feet, and displaced 1,350 tons. she had four 16-cylinder main engines, Winton Model 16201As, that produced 1,300 horsepower each. With the Wintons, she could make just over 19 knots and had a range of 11,000 nautical miles. Her test depth was 250 feet. Crew complement was 5 officers and 45 enlisted, although during the war years, patrols commonly saw closer to 75 people on board. First assigned to San Diego, she was later transferred to the Asiatic Fleet in the Philippines, which is where she was located at the outbreak of the war. Under the command of Lieutenant Commander Barton Bacon, Jr., Pickerel made for sea immediately after hearing of the Pearl Harbor attack and made her first patrol along the coast of southern Vietnam, near Cam Ranh Bay. She tracked several Japanese ships but lost them in poor weather, and later fired 5 torpedoes at a small patrol craft, all of which missed. Her second patrol was more successful, though, sinking 2 Japanese freighters for 10,000 tons in January of 1942. During her third and fourth patrols, spanning February until June, she failed to sink any targets despite making 6 separate attacks. In 2 of the attacks, Commander Bacon fired full spreads of 3 and 4 torpedoes with no hits, possibly indicating the ship was the victim of the early war torpedo malfunctions. In August, Pickerel made her 5th patrol as she transited back to Pearl Harbor for overhaul. Along the way, she made another 3 attacks. Only 1 torpedo out of 8 scored a hit, damaging a freighter but not sinking it. Back in California, Commander Bacon was awarded a Silver Star for his 5 patrols and reassigned as an instructor at submarine school in New London, back in Connecticut. The ship's XO, Lieutenant Commander Augustus Alston, Jr., was promoted to her captain. Pickerel's 6th patrol, operating from Pearl Harbor, saw equally hard luck, despite being notably armed with improved versions of the Mark 14 torpedo. She made 16 separate attacks, only sinking 1 3,000-ton merchant and shooting up a convoy of sampans with the deck gun. Pickerel's final patrol was her 7th, setting off from Pearl Harbor on March 18, 1943, still under the command of Lieutenant Commander Alston. She topped off fuel at Midway on March 22nd, then set sail for the Japanese mainland. She was never heard from again. Japanese records for the Honshu area in April 1943 are confused, and it's impossible to know what really became of the submarine and her crew. A submarine chaser was reported sunk on April 3rd. A subsequent anti-sub attack was also reported on April 3rd off the coast of Honshu, technically outside the Pickerel's patrol area, but no other subs were operating in this area. It's possible that Commander Alston moved the Pickerel north to look for better hunting. Aircraft bombed an unidentified sub, then directed 2 ships to the spot who dropped 26 depth charges. A large amount of oil floated to the surface, enough of it for the Japanese to call off their attacks. However, records then show that another Japanese merchant was sunk on the 7th, 4 days later, indicating that a sub was still operating in the area, assuming that all of the dates are correct. Several other anti-sub attacks were also recorded around this time. Given the confusion of the records, it's possible that one of these later attacks sunk the Pickerel, or that she was depth-charged and the attack was never recorded. Either way, she never reported in as expected on May 6th, and repeated radio messages to her were met with silence. American scout planes found nothing along her expected course back to Midway, and on May 12, 1943, she was reported lost with all hands, becoming the first U.S. submarine lost in the Central Pacific area. Overall, during 6 patrols, Pickerel sank 5 ships totaling 16,100 tons, and damaged another 10, totaling 9,100 tons, with another 2 likely sunk on her 7th patrol. Pickerel became one of the 52 U.S. submarines lost during the war, her 74 men on board at the time adding their names to the list of 3,500 submariners who never returned to port. Oh, hey! Look at that. Contact just north of us. A convoy. We're only a few hours out of port. It's, quarter to 4 in the afternoon. We just picked up something up to our north here. We're turning to intercept. What do we got? Whoa! There we go. Looks like a big old light cruiser. Bearing 25 degrees.
Yes, sir.
I say big because that's the biggest ship we've seen so far in this campaign, warship-wise at least. And juicy warship targets are actually pretty rare. So we'll have to determine next, is he an escort for a convoy, or is he being escorted by other ships?
Yes, sir.
Let's call away General Quarters. All compartments report manned for battle stations. Let's start tracking these targets here. We've got at least 2 ships at the moment. And it sort of looks like they're heading southeast. We'll turn due east and continue to close, but hopefully not be seen. Yeah, there's that 3-stacked, what I assume is a light cruiser. And there's a destroyer. And there's another destroyer, I believe. And I see smoke just... Oh, there's the masts. So yes, we've got like 3 or 4 ships already. We better report this back to headquarters. So I don't see any merchant ships. This looks like a warship task force, only about 3 hours away from Surabaya. Alright, we've got a rough course estimate laid out here. They're definitely moving to the southeast. And this cruiser appears to be the closest of the contacts. It looks like the destroyer escorts are on the far side. So let's see if we can identify this old girl and see what we're actually dealing with here. So here's all of our 2-masted destroyers. Destroyer. Oh! That was a 3-master. A Tenryu light cruiser. Looks like 3 stacks. A seaplane and 2 guns out on the bow there. I think this might be it. It's a good starting place either way, so we'll call it a Tenryu. And it's a warship, so we go by the stack height. And of course she is still slightly over the horizon, so TDC is showing right at 5 miles, or just under 5 miles as usual, but that's okay. Good find. We'll direct further assets to intercept. So HQ is acknowledging our report. We'll begin our 3-minute time check. We'll see what the speed is on this group of ships here. Top speed of 33 knots, draft of 13 feet. Let's go ahead and set our torpedo depths here because I want to make a run on this cruiser. So there's 13 feet. Let's add 4 or 5 feet extra to ensure the torpedoes run underneath the hull for a magnetic detonation Torpedo 2, though, will set right at 13 feet, and then Torpedo 3 will go back to 18 feet. So we'll have 2 deep runners, and then 1 right at the keel line. Theoretically, that will be the middle of target torpedo, because of the way I fire my spreads. So, in case the other 2 run really deep or fail, those magnetic detonators, if they fail, maybe the middle one will get a contact detonation, if nothing else. The danger is, though, setting it right at the keel level can sometimes mean you'll get a dud because the curvature of the bottom of the hull will cause the torpedoes to hit at a weird angle and not detonate. So that's something to consider too. But we have very heavy seas today, so that can make the torpedoes run deep, and the torpedoes themselves can potentially run 5 to 10 feet deep just because they suck. So yeah, we got a lot to worry about here. Whoa, 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 what is that? That looks like a heavy cruiser and a nut. That's 2 heavy cruisers. Wait, where the hell are these guys? Holy shit. Bearing 230. Oh, and that's an escort. 0 bearing on that escort. Oh shit, have they seen us? Here, let's break off a little bit, and we'll open up the distance.
Yes, sir.
Oh, what is that? We're still doing our time run here. It looks like there's an escort maybe heading due south at us. Alright. I'm reprioritizing my targets. Apparently these guys are heavy, what appear to be heavy cruisers. And I would rather try to get a shot off on them. So maybe that's what these guys were actually escorting. So that Tenryu is not the biggest ship. Oh my god, there's another escort, 0 bearing. Oh yeah. Okay, very prominent. They're right behind us now, so we have our stern directly to them, hopefully making it a little bit harder to see. Did somebody have radar?
New course 19.
I wonder if we were spotted on radar. We're dealing with actual Imperial Navy ships now, not just lowly escorts, crappy sub-chasers. These are actual warships who potentially are equipped with radar. So maybe they spotted us, or maybe they just saw us by lookouts. Let's see. Trying to identify what this thing is. Could be a Maya. I'm looking at the stack shape and the mast shape. Okay, and then we're into carriers. Alright, so only a couple of heavy cruisers to choose from. And there's 2 that look like they might fit the bill. Yeah, that's back into the light cruisers. So the Takeo, or Takao. We'll say Takeo. That sounds more Japanese. I have no idea how to actually pronounce that, but that sort of looks like what we're dealing with here.
Returning to course, sir. Yes, sir. Returning to course, sir. Yes, sir. Ship spotted.
I think they're zigzagging too. I think we've definitely been spotted. Now I see float plane scouts on the back as well.
Ship spotted.
What I think are scout planes. Again, she's way far over the horizon. Probably at 8 miles, I would estimate. We'll reset our torpedoes for that much deeper draft. Oh god, look at this. We've got destroyers bearing right on us. They know that we're here. We're doing 18 knots right now on the surface, but I think I'm going to submerge now while they're still far away. Oh, that's curious. This actually looks like two different fleets. It seems to be counting the light ships as one fleet and the heavy ships as a different fleet. Well, we've got 3 destroyers coming at us. Let's get down to periscope depth before they can get closer to us. Maybe we can shake them off before they get too close.
Current depth 40.
Okay, down near the bottom now. Still running at high speed for the moment. If those destroyers continue to close, then maybe we'll go to silent running.
Yes,
but
sir.
at the moment, they're still very
Ahead,
far
sir.
astern. We saw that
Yes,
the
sir.
jig was definitely up. Everybody was zigzagging up there, both the light cruiser and the heavy cruisers. So, in a way, that's bad because those destroyers are looking for us. But zigzagging on the heavies means that they're actually going to be slowing their overall speed, which is beneficial to us. Unfortunately, pretty shallow water here.
New depth 10.
Not terribly shallow, but certainly not deep enough to go all the way down to test depth if we need to escape. Okay, looks like those destroyers have arrived on the last spot that they saw us and are now searching very far astern. Here's the heavy cruiser, continuing to zigzag, but not radically altering their course. So I just noticed something. The float planes in the back and the forward turrets. The Maya heavy cruiser is only showing 1 float plane in the back and 2 forward turrets. The Takeo has 3 forward turrets and 2 aft. So even though the float plane situation is a little weird looking, I think, yeah, the Mayas only have 2 and have 2 float planes, I'm assuming, next to each other. The Takeo has what looks like 4.
Contact! Warship! Closing! Bearing! 223. Long range! Contact! Warship! Constant distance! Bearing! 233. Long range! Contact! Warship! Constant distance! Bearing! 2.
I hate having to jump onto the
range.
sonar station, or the hydrophone station myself, because that's not my job. We have very
Contact.
competent
Warship.
enlisted
Constant
sailors who go to
distance.
school for a long
Bearing.
time for this.
269.
We'll just go ahead
Long
and...
range.
they're not detecting the ships for some reason, so I'm just going to jump in here and do it. Just so we can... There we go. We can at least just keep track of where they currently are. So the heavies look like they're just about abreast of us, about 8 miles away off our port side. We're paralleling with them for another 3 miles, and then we'll start to close the gap.
Periscope depth. Yes,
Let's
sir.
go up to periscope depth and take a physical look around and see how far away those destroyers are, because if they're congregating behind us, we might be far enough away to surface again for a fast run to close these bastards.
Yes, sir. Rig for silent running. Yes, sir.
Let's go down to silent running just in case they're nearby, and I need to slow down before we raise the scope, because I don't want a huge periscope feather from too high speed. I have a suspicion that they did not see us physically. I think somebody saw us on a radar. Because as we left that original location, they didn't follow us. They went to where we were and not where we are, which means they were not tracking us visually. Yeah, there we go. Well astern. Look at that. Almost 4 or 5 miles away. They're getting very close to the horizon. Well beyond us. Clustered back there. Yeah, they do not know where we are. What is that? Bearing 265. Is this the light cruiser? Let's wait for the waves. Ugh, come on. Heavy seas. Frustrating to try to get a look at anything. Come on. Alright. Up we go.
Yes, sir. Ahead flank. Yes, sir. Surface the boat.
Surface, surface, surface.
We're far enough away from those escorts, I'm willing to risk it to at least just see what's going on and figure out the tactical situation. We can always go back down if we have to. Alright, there we go. Back on the surface. Back up to flank speed. We'll run up to 18, 19 knots. Probably only 18 in these heavy seas. Checking in behind us. Our stern is to these guys, so we're also giving them a very narrow profile, making it harder for us to see. Oh, look at that. Middle escort is dropping depth charges. They think that we're back there. For sure. 100%. There's the detonation, and there's a second one. We're so far away we can barely see the animations, but they are dropping... There's a third. Dropping depth charges on where they think a submarine is, and they're almost 4 miles off from where we actually are.
Ship spotted.
Alright. I want
Yes,
4
sir.
engine speed.
Stand
Let's
at
take
propulsion.
the charging off. Let's open the distance from these guys as fast as possible. And they're not turning to intercept us yet, so I'm going to hold this course and on the surface for the moment.
Ship spotted.
Alright, look at the number of ships we actually have up here. Holy moly. Here are the heavy cruisers on the far side. Let's readjust their course a little bit. Although keeping in mind that they are zigzagging. So now we want to take sort of a median course. Huh, officer of the deck pointing at something. There's the light cruiser again. So it looks like the light cruiser is out front. There's the heavies out beyond her. Alright, let's I want to extend out
Yes, sir. Returning to course.
this
sir.
a little bit.
Yes,
Let's
sir.
parallel their
Returning to
course
sir.
more,
Yes, sir.
and then
Yes, sir. Returning to course. sir.
go in.
Yes, sir.
Here's the
Returning
thing.
to course, sir.
The
Yes, sir.
heavies already know that there's a submarine here, but they're not radically altering their course. Which means that staying on the surface, like our cover's already blown.
Ship spotted.
So I'm going to stay on the surface as long as I can to not get shot, but be able to use the speed to pass them, because I think we're actually outrunning them at the moment. Oh yeah, so there we go. So there's the third. There's actually 3 fleets here, just off this little island here out in the Java Sea. Unfortunately, we do have this light cruiser in between us. So at low speed, we could maybe do a 9,000 yard shot from far away. We could do a full spread of 4. So that's an option I am keeping in mind. If we cannot close because of that light cruiser, I'll shoot from far range and just try to get a hit, because dude, I cannot let these targets go by. Heavy cruisers, this is a very rare occasion. I hardly ever see actual warships that are big. Like, this is very exciting. So there's our 3 minutes. And we have a base speed of around 17.5 or 18 knots. Keeping in mind that we're now not looking for actual speed or course. We need to find their median course because they're zigzagging. So averages. We need to average it out. So that's what we're going to start doing. Let's move our range circle down here. So that's the 9,000 yards that we need for a maximum distance shot. Which is not ideal. I don't want to do that.
Ship spotted.
But I would rather at least fire at extreme range and maybe get a hit than just let them pass by. So alright, 4:34 in the afternoon now. Some time has passed. The destroyer escorts are still dead astern of us. Some of them over the horizon now, so further than 5 miles away. Still looking in that area that we were an hour ago, or whenever it was. So definitely not closing on us. There's that light cruiser bearing 250. She is going 0 bearing on us. Is she turning towards us or just doing some crazy zigzags? We have to keep an eye on her. Turning around, maybe?
Ship spotted.
I would actually be okay at this point if she suddenly spotted us and came right towards us, because I would happily take a down-the-throat shot at this light cruiser, because, one, we could get the credit for it, but also it would clear out the opening on the way to the heavy cruisers. Okay, so... Wait a minute, what the hell is this? How did the ship get out in front of us? Is this another fleet? What? Hold on. Yeah, look at that. Looks like another small escort out at 300. How did they get out there? I hadn't seen any ships in front of us. There's another one. Whoa, what the hell? Those are like big cruisers. What? Is that a battleship? Okay, what in the hell is going on here? Where did this fleet come from? This is a separate fleet. A task force coming in, heading west. Okay, not enough time has passed to report another convoy. These guys are coming right across our path. They're cutting left to right, right in front of us. Okay, so this is like 4 different fleets right here. Can we identify what this is? That is a big ship. Oh, man. The waves are going to make me seasick looking through the stupid binoculars here. Okay, so it's not another heavy cruiser. It's got a very distinctive mast up forward.
Yes, sir.
Ahead 1/3.
Alright. You know what? I don't want to get spotted by yet another fleet. Let's take her down to periscope depth. Down, down, down. Clear the bridge. Alright, now we're a little more stable of a platform. I can actually see what we're looking at here. So, looks like maybe 2 cruisers of some sort. This big girl, whatever she is, another heavy cruiser. Oh, that's sort of got... Well, no, that's what I was just looking at, though. The Takeo. And she does not look the same. Is it maybe a light cruiser? Oh. Yeah, that's sort of a... That's sort of the mast we're looking at. A Naka light cruiser. I don't know, man. She seems awfully big for a light cruiser. That can't be right. Most of these heavy cruisers have the sort of modern superstructure and stack arrangement. Maybe it really is a battleship. Could it be an older Japanese battleship? The eyes. Oh, that's the eyes with the aircraft carrier variation. Well, it's definitely not a Yamato, so we only have a couple of options here. A Fuso, the eyes. Still cannot see over these damn waves, so let's bring up a couple extra feet. I'm just trying to ID these things. So those are the battleships. They do have big, tall superstructures, but not quite what we're still looking at. What the hell is this thing? I wonder. Yes, that was the problem. They're not Japanese at all. This is an allied task force of Dutch, British, and American ships. I think this is the ABDA task force. The ship that I was trying to identify here was actually a Northampton heavy cruiser. It's American. That's why I couldn't find it in the book. This is the combined Allied fleet protecting Java, and they've now moved into position and are actually engaging the Japanese fleets for a surface battle.
Yes, sir. Surface the boat. Yes, sir.
Surface, surface, surface.
So, okay, so now we know these guys are friendlies, so we're going to surface, run full speed, let's get that periscope down, and we'll cut in behind them, using them for cover, because I still want to try to get at those heavy ships. So yeah, so Japanese task force to the north, ABDA task force in front of us. So this is the actual ABDA task force. I've never seen this before. This is a first. I didn't actually even know that the combined fleet was in these campaigns, but here they are. I know, right? OOD is excitedly pointing at the friendly ships. I see them, buddy. I see them. We're going to use them to our advantage and try to get the shots in on those heavy cruisers still. Now that's the perfect example of why I take such exception to people who think that realism means doing everything yourself in a sub-game, like some sort of cartoon villain in his submarine. If you like the challenge, that I am completely fine with, and I understand that, but it's definitely not realistic. The entire lookout team wouldn't have sat there quietly and watched me struggle with the ID book for 10 minutes. Somebody would have piped up and said, "Hey, Captain, I think they're allies," or "That's a Northampton." Somebody would have said something and we would have been through that much faster, but that's okay, we figured it out. But that was a good example of why I don't subscribe to that way of thinking. Here's that British destroyer engaging the light cruiser in a running battle. Enemy destroyers firing from the distance as well. Wow, the destroyer is actually so close. It's within spitting distance of the heavy cruisers, which are surprisingly not engaging. Oh, they just called away general quarters, though. Okay, cutting in behind the Abda fleet now, which I'm a little surprised. They're continuing to steam off to the west. I hope they're going to circle back around here in a minute, but we'll use them for protection. We'll cut in behind them before we go move back to port to try to close the distance on those cruisers. For some reason, it seems the fleets are not quite engaging with each other. So I have sort of a crazy plan to get their attention and maybe bring them together.
Yes, sir.
Ahead, stand.
Where's that light cruiser? That was her. So those are the heavy cruisers. They're very, very far away. There's the light cruiser, which I think is our nearest target. With our little pea-shooter 3-inch gun, we're going to try to get their attention. So she is just at or right over the horizon line, so up to 10,000 yards. That's 5 miles. That's the edge of the horizon. Rounds away. This is the equivalent of waving a hanky out. Trying to get their attention. Yoo-hoo, boys, over here! Let's pull it back a little bit to 9,000 yards. Fire again. This poor 3-inch gun must be nearly vertical. I can't imagine that she actually even has the power to maybe reach this distance, but... Oh, nope, there was a splash. I saw it right there. Just to the right of the ship. Another round away. I think at this distance we have 2 or 3 rounds still in the air as we're firing a third. Oh, that was another splash. I will lead her a little bit. Okay, so that's a few rounds away. Ooh, it looks like maybe... Oh, yeah, there was another splash. Did you see that? There's the heavy cruisers. It looks like maybe people are actually pointed at us. Yeah, look, the heavy cruisers are coming right towards us. Or near enough in this direction to be coming towards us.
Yes, sir. New course. 4, 6. Yes, sir.
Ahead, flank.
Alright. Crossing nearby. Just off the beam of this British destroyer. There's the rest of the fleet. Does it look like they're turning to starboard? They might be. hope my little trick worked. Oh no! Oh, that poor British ship! She lost the running battle. Come on, guys, swing around. You just lost one of your own ships. Ooh, wow. The big boys are getting awfully close. 10 degrees off our starboard bow now.
5. Yes, sir.
Was it the Maya class? I can't remember. Shit. Well, we'll just call it that. Once we can see the turrets a little better, we'll reclassify it if we have to. So now they're heading from right to left. We're heading almost due north. We've doubled back, and we're heading back up towards that enemy fleet now that they seem to have turned to the west.
Yes, sir. Ship spotted. New course. 3, 2.
So now they're way off
Yes, sir.
course from what they were originally doing, so we have to alter ours as well. Alright, we're right between these two fleets. Let's get down and clear the decks.
Yes, sir. Turning to course. Periscope. Yes, sir.
Ahead 1/3.
Dive, dive.
Now, we're just on the fly. These fleets are moving. This is a completely fluid tactical situation. Getting any sort of plot set up is going to be very difficult. My hope is that the heavies continue to close in this direction towards the friendly fleet, dragging them right towards us and our torpedoes.
Yes, sir. New depth. 4-8. Yes, sir.
They're still pretty far away, but if we stay surfaced at this point, we really run the risk of becoming a target. So they're estimating 13 knots, doing 325 degrees. Well, that doesn't seem right, so we'll just call it here at 60 degrees angle. Let's try to mark him. So they're generally moving about that direction. Again, still zigzagging, so we're taking that into account. How close are we? First shot. There's the 1,000 yards. That would be an ideal distance.
Yes, sir. Ahead flank.
Maybe we can do it. Maybe we can close to 1,000 yards. Four-engine speed up to flank. Let's try to close that distance, people.
Contact. Warship. Closing.
There we go. Sonar men are picking up targets now on their own. The heavy cruisers are looking at something. Look, all their turrets are trained on something. I hope it's the friendly fleet. Not that I want the friendly fleet to get shot, but I want these guys to engage each other
Yes, sir.
so we can try to get the hit. Also, I noticed again, it's actually 3 turrets on the forward part of the cruisers, though they're actually the Takeo heavy cruisers, which now I remember is what I identified them as before. So we'll,
8. Yes, sir.
not a big deal. We'll just change their designation. The ships seem to be pretty close to each other in draft and height, so I think for shooting purposes they would have been close enough.
Contact! Warship! Close.
There we go. Yeah, she's pretty close now.
Long range.
So's the second one. But I noticed that this light cruiser is actually really close too. Now, unfortunately, if you look at the TDC... Okay, so even the aft one is still 7,000 yards away. And we'd have to be shooting right now to get an actual perpendicular shot. And it's actually even worse than that if the navigator's correct. They're saying 24 knots of speed. TDC is only set for 18 right now. That would be a very difficult shot. I wonder...
Yes, sir. Ahead flank.
Well, you know what? Let's go back down. We'll reassess in a minute. I'm wondering if those light ships continue to move in. Maybe we target them instead. Yeah, look at this. Look at this mark. Now it looks like maybe the heavies are turning back to starboard, maybe heading more north or northwest. So the situation has changed once again that quickly. Let's just hang out for a minute or so and then we'll reassess. Coming back to periscope depth here. Scope is already up as it's breaking the surface. TDC is showing the heavies at 5,000 yards, which, while far away, would still at least be a little more manageable. Oh god, look at that though. They're angling away from us at like 45 degrees. Estimated doing 25 knots. Maybe they're still zigzagging, so maybe she's going to come back into a better course for firing. Now she's estimated at 33 knots, so she's just getting faster the more we try to estimate her speed. It's sort of wild and all over the place with the courses and speeds too, so I'm not even inputting them because I don't even really trust them right now. I'm going to try for a Hail Mary. Tube 1 is coming open. Let's take another bearing and distance 6,300 yards. Estimated 25 knots. Let's just maybe do a huge spread of 4 torpedoes and hope that maybe something will catch her. Whoops. Draft of 18 feet. Let's set it right underneath at 20. And hope the magnetic detonators actually work. Cross our fingers.
Yes, sir. Ahead flank.
Oh my god, no, look, she's turning so steeply. There's literally no way we're gonna hit her. Here's the one in back. Maybe we could get another shot at her instead. The second heavy back, although she's turning away pretty hard too. Oh my god, that's basically an impossible shot. Shit. Alright, here's Akuma. Akuma Matata. She's got a draft of 16 feet. Maybe we could take her instead. She's significantly closer. Although she is also turning away. The whole fleet is turning back away to the north. God damn it. Damn, damn, damn. Damn. I don't even know if it's worth taking a shot at this point. I mean, maybe she's going to come back to the left. You know what? We're here. If this fleet sails away, we're not even going to get a shot again, potentially. So let's... She's only 2,500 yards. That's actually well within range of a fast torpedo.
Firing tube 1.
Fire 1! Let's continue spread. Let's go 1 degree angle. Firing 2! Oh, make sure that we're at 16 feet. There's 1 degree right.
Torpedo in the water. Firing tube 3.
And then we'll maybe do 4 back on a 0 offset angle.
Torpedo in the water.
Let's retake some readings real quick to recalibrate the TDC. It says she's doing 20 knots. There we go, 16 feet depth. Tube 4 was already open. I've reopened it. Oh man, and now she's cutting back away to the north already. The stopwatch is showing... Oh my god, still more than a minute away. Like 2 minutes of travel time out. Oh, there they are. That's all 3 torpedoes. They're going way to the left, and now everyone is cut back to the right. It is such a long distance that maybe the Kuma will pull into them, but... I guess let's just keep an eye out. We'll hold torpedo 4 in reserve for the moment.
New course 27. Yes, sir. Ahead flank.
Alright, down we go. We're just going to watch that stopwatch and listen for possible impacts. Although that was such a crazy shot, I don't have a lot of confidence in that.
Torpedo missed, sir.
Oh, damn. All the torpedoes have missed. They've reached their end of run time and they've exploded harmlessly down in the depths. I mean, I guess I wasn't really expecting a torpedo hit. That was such a sloppy shot. They were on a wing and a prayer anyways, but I was really hoping that maybe we would make contact with one of them. And I guess the most frustrating thing is the fact that the friendly Allied fleet has just left the area, apparently. They never turned and engaged the Japanese fleet, which is now turned away and heading away from us, heading up to the north. So that might have been our only shot at firing it at some of those warships. Well, I mean, I guess the only thing I can do now, I'm not going to give up, so we're going to try to parallel their course. Once we're at a safe distance, we can surface and then run at top speed and maybe try to get back around them. Maybe we can stay in contact and try to get another shot, I don't know, tonight maybe. Hold the phone. Look at this. The Abda fleet has come back around. They're beelining it for the enemy fleet now. We have not been abandoned. They apparently just had to swing around, and they're coming back, engaging the Japanese fleet.
3. Long range.
Here we are. We've just been submerged this whole time watching the action take place, feeling like we've been hiding underneath a table in the middle of a bar fight in an Old West saloon. This is absolutely phenomenal. I have never seen in a campaign a surface battle like this.
Surface, surface, surface.
There's just death and destruction as far as the eye can see up here. We're pretty far away from dangers, so we're coming up to the surface now. Huge plumes of smoke, but the action is continuing out to, what is that, out to the northeast. There's the Northampton. Water geysers still coming up from rounds hitting. There's the additional Dutch cruisers, some of which still remain. There's just carnage everywhere. Burning ship still out there, just out in front of the nose. Looks like a Japanese destroyer still taking hits from the Abda fleet, what remains of it. Allies taking heavy losses in that encounter as well. The waves are just on fire up here. How many thousands of men just lost their lives in that 5 to 10 minute span? Unbelievable. Another ship meets her watery grave behind the Abda fleet as it continues to fire at Japanese stragglers. Here's the core of the fleet. Looks like 2 English cruisers, a Dutch cruiser, and the Northampton, the American cruiser, out front. Most of their defensive destroyer ring is gone. Several of the heavy Allied cruisers were sunk as well, still firing though, as they make their way to the east and away from us, further and further opening the gap. Out over the horizon now, more than 5 miles, still lighting something up. Another Japanese destroyer meets her end as well, screws out of the water, going bow down. Bodies underneath it floating in the waves. We're coming up alongside this American destroyer, dead in the water. Just received possibly her death blow. She's been dead in the water here for a few minutes as we've been coming up, but just received a final hit from a Japanese destroyer off in the distance. And she is sitting awfully low in the water. I think her time in this world is coming to an end as well. There's the Japanese... Oh, that's what remains of the Japanese destroyer. Look at that! Totem pole out in the distance. Japanese sailors trying to escape from her as well. Possibly with her final round she fired at the American, sinking them before she herself has gone down. That, ladies and gentlemen, I think is going to be a good time to wrap up this episode. I am still flabbergasted by what has happened here. This was amazing and just sort of sobering at the same time. So let's call it for today. We'll pick up here next time as we pick our way through the wreckage and the rubble and the bodies, and we'll continue to try to track what remains of that Japanese fleet. We'll see you then.